Hi, and welcome to another episode of Grit Factor. I am Erin Jane Miller, and I'm your host. Today, we are chatting with Chantel Willie Petersen. She is Senior Strategist and Researcher in the creative industry at Wits University. Chantel, welcome to the show.
Erin, it's fantastic to be with you today. Thank you. Thank you. It's great to be here.
I'm so excited to chat to you and share with our listeners your amazing story. Let's get started. Let's get right into it. Tell us what is it that you do on a daily? You are a researcher, you are a strategist. What does that look like and what does it entail?
Right. Thank you, Erin. I spend a lot of time, I think, after having a 20-year career path in the practicing of music and sector work, I'm now particularly focused on research in the area of women's studies. So really looking at marginal groups, being able to archive an aspect of South African history for women of color that has not yet been done. And one of the primary roles of this is to digitize it so that we can add to the history of people that need to be recognized.
That is amazing.
Thank you, Erin. And then I do play the role, I serve as the first president for the South African Association for Jazz Education. And a large part of that work has been to take to the frontier the idea that music from the South African sector plays a role in diplomacy. It plays a role in cultural commodity. It plays a role in having a strategy and an economy that can really empower lives. And so I'm based at Wits University. I serve as a composer. I teach. But I think my daily life is really being of service to others. Because when that gift is committed to service, there's so much more that is given to the what of what we do, because it starts to shape the how of what we do. Absolutely. So I'm just really, really thrilled to.
That's amazing.
It's a very dynamic and wonderful job, work to do.
That's amazing. So I think, I know you are obviously serving on all these boards and you are teaching and you are raising a daughter and you're doing so many amazing things. And I just want you to share maybe a little bit about your story. Where did it all start? How did it start for you?
Right, Erin. I love music. My parents were pastors. My mom passed, but my dad has continued to be in the ministry, and I've loved music all my life. And when I was 18, I was blessed with a scholarship to go and study in Europe, and that led to me working with Erykah Badu, Stevie Wonder, some of the best in Hollywood for a season of about 10 years.
Wow.
And I then returned with the love of my life and started doing my PhD study in South Africa. And I've moved through different seasons of understanding the significance of music, not only as something of my own personal expression, but it has more and more become about networking so that others take on the role and understand the capacity that music really has as a sector to empower and transform. So it started as a practice of worship in church, and then it has grown to become something where skill and experience has allowed me to work in various interdisciplinary fields. And I think at the point that I am now, Erin, I feel so passionate about being able to understand the idea that we are in this fourth industrial revolution and where are we taking education forward. So I'm really passionate about education because it brings access, it brings transformation. And I am also very passionate about understanding what structures do we need, how do we need to implement those changes so that we really allow the marginal and those that have will and experience to start disseminating who they are and what they know so that there's equality and justice and transformation, and that we have agency with the gifts we're given in life.
You speak about marginalized and just, empowering those ones who don't listen. How on a practical level, is that rolled out? Is the, I know you sit as the chairwoman. Maybe chat a little bit about that of the Jazz Association, and how is that the vehicle that you guys use to assist the kids coming up and provide opportunities? What does that look like?
Yes, Erin. I have to say that I've had many mentors in my life, but I didn't have a mentor when it came to understanding how national leadership works. So it's been a real period of growth. And I've had to learn to be vulnerable. I've had to learn to humble myself and ask for assistance, because you can't help where you have no idea what that help needs and what that help looks like. So, Erin, at the moment, we've strategized so that we have a database of understanding what, at some level, the music sector looks like in education and what needs to be brought into a resource capacity to create capacity. And one of the big things is understanding what education is going to look like in 30 years. And even though we are, in a 30-year period of music and democracy, how are we going to sustain that for the next 30 years? It's no longer just going to be book and pen. It's the idea that we need to be digitally informed. We need to be able to work with data that's not just information or what we buy to be able to stay in communication, but it's the fact that data enables us to express and become a part of a global market. It allows us to become a part of the innovation that's happening. So a lot of the work we're trying to do now is to connect community and rural satellites, acknowledge the work that's being done, because we're always working on the shoulders of others. None of us come in as a marvel. We are always having to understand an honor of culture, a culture of honor, and a culture to honor. So the large part of what we've done is laid out some research, built up some data, and now we have the wonderful opportunity to collaborate with 2 international organizations, and that is so that we can learn how it is that they are building in what they call the global north, so that in the south we don't lose who we are, but we learn from what has been gained before. So that's a large part. It's program, Erin, but it's also understanding what is education and what is it going to look like, and how are we going to enable the resource for this and make sure that we can do it within corporate and within a national environment, but also what do we do as individuals? What do we have that works, and how do we multiply that and then take dominion of it so that others benefit?
Very exciting.
Thank
So
you, Erin.
exciting. Definitely you are pioneering a path for a whole bunch of other young kids coming through. And that's really, really admirable. I wanted you to just touch on AI in music, and what does that look like? Are you guys exploring that at Wits, at that level? Are the students dabbling with AI and music, and maybe just touch a bit on that.
Yes, Erin, artificial intelligence and music is more than ever going to become a collaborative type of work because of the fact that machines actually simulate how we think. So it's a matter of saying how we're going to embrace this without taking away from the fact that there's still what we do that does not require machines to validate that. So within the music sector, there's a lot of work, especially in South Africa, especially in the rural communities. So part of what I'm doing in my personal capacity is writing up curriculum to train and to teach, because we use software, we use tools which have an AI base all the time. But how do we mobilize it into the sector so that nobody is left behind, because it's expensive. So we need to look at the software that is accessible, that is free, that allows for artistic expression and empowerment, but that also, I think, encourages the idea that music is far greater than only the money that it serves. There's a message. And if we allow technology to serve a message and keep an ethical eye on the way that it's used and how it is going to be monitored and dispersed, I think it's going to make a huge impact, because we can learn faster. More people can have access to it within a greater period of time, and it doesn't have to be a cost. So there is a shift, but the South African music market is flourishing. So the possibility for more people to step in and engage in the industry, knowing how to use technology, is what's exciting.
Lots of benefits and lots of good things.
Yes.
And excited for that and to see how that unfolds. But I wanted to chat a little bit more about you and your family, your home, and just what makes you Sean, what makes you Chantal, what makes you at the core of who you are. You have the biggest heart, and you have a heart to train and develop and raise up the next generation and bring them into their spaces and the spaces that they need to occupy. But you've been through a lot of challenges on a personal level, and so I just wanted to touch on that and how has that affected you, because we often see people functioning. And we see them as chairwomen of the board, and we see them as this amazing lecturer and someone that's doing their PhD, And I mean, wow, that's like, that for me, I couldn't even, like, you know, to comprehend all the things that you have to do and have responsibility for, and your daughter you've got with you as well. You know, what does the last season look like for you, that you've come through, and your experiences that you've encountered?
Erin, in the last 3 years, I lost my beloved husband to COVID. And his name is Andre Petersen. And the name of who my husband is, for me, is not only a tower of inspiration, it is a tower of example. But Andre has left, I think, something for me to continue to build on in life. But it didn't come because there was the fact that he's no longer here. I think at the time of loss, when he passed with COVID, one of the most devastating factors that anyone would deal with, and in my instance, losing a life partner, is understanding how love is going to be refilled in your life, and everything about the relationship that pertains to family, that pertains to growth, that pertains to your vision, that pertains to building. And as I was sharing with you, Erin, you know, I particularly wanted to ponder on that question. And when you get to a place of understanding that grit has to be more than what your own self-interest is. Because you're never going to be able to just stand because things matter to you. I had to get to the point to be able to take perspective on, if I'm going to choose to move forward in a certain direction after losing the love of my youth, the love of my life, then I'm going to have to make a decision that's far greater than what my feelings were about. I had to get to the point where I had to say, this loss is going to become gain only if I understand what it's asking me to give. And I had to give through many difficult seasons. I think I had to understand that in this period of me to heal, for me to heal, I'm actually going to have to learn how to give hope to those around me, not without processing what that means. But also, Pastor Eden, I needed to be able to give an ability of vulnerability so that I could stand and be supported by others. I had to allow myself to give those around me an opportunity to understand that when loss of that nature comes, you have to know that change is complex. But change is never meant to break us, not with the understanding, in my instance, of what I believe spiritually. There is a breaking that comes, but there comes a point when that breaking builds you, when your intention time and time again has been on the perspective that this loss has to serve for a greater good. I cannot do it on my own. But I am going to make a shift in my expectation, and I am going to make a shift in the way that I perceive the idea that something has been taken from me. What I'm going to do with that is give into it even more. And that sort of surrender has been a process of times where I could literally feel a paralysis coming over my body physically. They were very, very, because, you know, when Andre passed, I also lost my gran. On the day I buried my gran, Andre passed. And I lost multiple people in a very, very, very short time, 3 weeks, as did so many. And so I think, Pastor E, even thinking about what this show is called, the grit to be able to endure and to be able to process trauma, the grit to be able to grow and to be able to process priorities and to prioritize within that process what is going to stand when I close my eyes one day. Because grit is influence, but it is also something that is imparted because there's a vision that is driving why it is that we are standing for the people that matter, the principles that matter, and for me also our past. Andre has left a past, but I believe that the loss that has been left will never overtake the living strength that you will find in the right ways. And my prayer is that for those who ever go through a season of loss, that you are always filled with the right type of grace to allow life to speak to those situations, that there's a constant infilling so that the grittiness becomes the gravel, becomes the road, becomes the bridge, becomes the arc, becomes the system that makes loss gain in your life.
Wow, that's incredible. I mean, that is such bravery and courage. And because I think, it's a selfless act for you to think about someone else in your time of loss.
But I also want to say to you, Erin, I've had leaders such as yourself pour into my life.
Support systems.
Leaders such as yourself and many others in my life who I acknowledge fully. There is nothing like knowing that somebody believes in you and says, it's going to be okay. It's not that we need to identify within everything of our seasons of loss. But grit is also saying, I'm teachable, no matter what season I'm in, and I'm going to be able to take from my leaders, take from those who are around and able to support me right now so that I can steer and navigate towards whatever it is that I've been set and called and positioned to take care of. For others, for myself too, of course, and our families.
Absolutely. Having the right people around you in seasons where you are struggling or when you're not strong, and having those individuals that are carrying you literally. Through that tough time, you can confide in them, or you can be silent in their presence because they know.
That's
and they literally are carrying you. So that for me is vital. And I know you do have a strong support structure. But I do believe that the fact that you chose to get up. You chose to get up from an incredibly painful loss and situation, and you decided that what's ahead is greater than what you're experiencing in the moment. And I think that's an important lesson to learn for us, for everyone, really, because at the end of the day, you have the choice. The decision is in your hand. You can be going through the toughest time. You can be going through the most challenging season of your life. I can't think of anything worse than losing someone so close to me. And even in a time like that, you still have to make a decision. Do I lay down and die with what, in this experience? Or do I get up for my daughter? Do I get up for the thousands of kids and people that are attached to what I need to build?
That's right.
And you chose to do that. You chose to, no, I am getting up because there's a legacy that I need to leave, not just because of everyone else, but it's something that speaks to Andre as well, and his heart, and how he was passionate about the next generation and the marginalized, and lifting people up and building communities. And you are carrying that legacy. And you're doing it with such grace. You're doing it with such strength. And I'm just so incredibly inspired by you.
Thank you,
and I want to thank you for just sharing your story. I know it's still so fresh. And you're still navigating, but I know that you have what you need to persevere and push through.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for that.
Thank you. Just wanted to say, I was thinking about some things that you may ask me. And I often talk to my daughter about the fact that life is not about losing things, but things are going to change. And my mom always laid something down in my life. She always laid a foundation. Not that we build for loss, but we do need to be, and with Zion, I have my baby girl, I always talk to her about the fact that when things change, we have to change how we perceive it as either loss, or we're going to have to see losing as an opportunity to prepare for, to understand that our relationships are intact. And not that we're living in fear, not that we're living in expectation. No, we are in expectation to be closing our eyes at the full measure of when we have lived what we have supposed to have succeeded and actualized all of our potential. But I also think, Erin, understanding that if you lay a foundation, that when crisis comes, when you've got to stand grit, when you have to be the grit that keeps the grind, that you understand why you're doing what you're doing, who you are, and that above all things, that you are able to sustain, I think, an identity that is not about who you are, but about who you serve and who's called you to serve. So that's just my personal sharing.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I just think to end off,
Yes.
is there anything that you would like to say to, the people that are listening?
Yes.
Maybe someone has experienced something similar to you.
Yes.
They've gone through tough situation or loss in their lives. Like what, can you just maybe just like a short word of encouragement to them and motivation? Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's really an honor to do. I would like to say that to anybody that has experienced loss, trauma, any form of violent departure, separation, that at some point, if you keep every will, every bit of strength, every bit of compass of who you are focused on the fact that there is a process that can take you forward if you are intentional about where your decisions are. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have the answers. But what you should have is a desire to stay standing. And there is always a way that support is brought and that you will find a compass, a family, an extended family, because there is nothing greater than loss. There's nothing greater that conquers loss than your personal victory when you've come through the time of grief. Wow. So hold on till that period.
Awesome.
It comes.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Eden, thank you.
So maybe just share with us before we go, where can we follow you? Where can we find you? If people want to get involved with amazing projects that you're doing or just want to check out what you are currently working on, where can we find you?
Erin, that's so great. Well, let me firstly tell everybody I'm a twin sister.
Yes.
So there's Chantel Willie and I'm Chantel Willie, but she's doing great things too.
Yeah.
I'm on chantelwilliepetersen.com. That's my website.
Okay.
You can contact me if you have any interest in education, music, being involved in sector developments, growth in the industry, strategic partnerships with global cultural interchange. Contact me. I'd love to serve you and see that all that you desire comes to pass.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your story and being on our show. All the best with all of your projects and the things that you are working on. You are a trailblazer and such a woman of strength and courage. So thank you.
Thank you, Erin. I feel the same.
Thank
and
you.
More of you. Thank you.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure to like, subscribe, and leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Don't forget to follow me on social media for any updates, behind-the-scenes content, and so much more. You can find me on Instagram at ErinJaneMiller08, on Facebook as Erin Jane Miller, and on TikTok at Erin Jane Miller.